clicking every link.
Hello, I have on at least one other occasion, possibly two or three more, referred to the immigration system that's going on right now, or rather the migration system, as something akin to a Ponzi scheme. And so when I came across this, somebody called Jay Chimiri, I looked up who Jim Chimmery is, and I did wonder if Jim Chimmery was a name that might have been something to do with this. However, I do hope I'm not insulting the gentleman. The AI overview is that he's a contemporary political commentator and author who contributes articles primarily focused on British politics and culture to the website KJM Today. His writing often expresses conservative viewpoints, which I would say is probably he writes sensibly. Anyway, so I looked up KJM Today, and it says here airlines, airports. It appears it's based in Rochester. It's a small publication. It doesn't appear to have too many followers. It seems to have started as something to do with airlines and airports, but it's broadened its remit. At least that's the way I think it developed. KJM, I don't know what KJM stands for, but the K might be Kingsborough. Right, so that gives you the background. And he quotes Alan Manning. Professor Alan Manning is a professor of economics at the Department of Economics in the London School of Economics, which is well known for having a somewhat left-wing bias. And it's got a nice restaurant. I know a long time ago I was there. Very nice, much nicer than King's College. Anyway, that's entire. Well, yeah, I was going to say it's beside the point, but perhaps it isn't, because left-wing socialists do know how to feather their own nests as well, don't they? Okay, so I don't know what Alan Manning's politics are, but he's quoted in Chimmery's article, and I assume he's somewhat to the left, but even so, can't avoid telling the truth. And this is the article. They knew mass migration would break Britain. They did it anyway. Professor Alan Manning, the former head of the government's own Migration Advisory Committee, was speaking publicly about Britain's immigration record when he said the quiet part out loud. Mass migration was used to paper over economic failure and is now storing up serious long-term problems. Give the man a cigar. Do you think that most average British people do not know that already? You don't have to be a big professor at the London School of Economics to observe the problems we're having, both in employment and ambition of the people, the native Brits, and in the stress on our social services of every sort. Not warned about, not predicted, stored up deliberately. Yeah, that admission matters because it comes from the heart of the system that designed and defended the policy. Manning was not criticising from the outside. He was explaining how the state learnt to substitute migration for reform. You see, what's happened was the British state was taking on more charity work. It used to be there were charities all over the place, church groups, Salvation Army. We all know about the Salvation Army. Those sorts of people took charge of the poor and indigent of our society. But then the state took on more and more of that out of our taxes. So we're not giving to charity anymore, we're giving to the government. The trouble with the government is it wastes such a lot. Charities don't waste because, well, in general, there are some that do, of course, and they're the ones that get the most government funding, yeah. But a lot of charities depend on volunteer work. Little old ladies who go and help at shelter on Saturday afternoons, or Monday afternoons. My own mother, before she got too ill, used to work the switchboard in the local hospice. When I go into the local hospital, there are volunteers there, just to help you orient yourself in this big, confusing, echoing place, that sort of thing. And that's what people used to do. And now more and more people are thinking, well, the government should do this. And the government doesn't do this. We do this because we have to pay the government to do it in our taxes. When austerity hollowed out public services and ministers refused to fix pay, productivity, or training, immigration became the workaround. It was easier to import people than to repair the model. So you see, you've got all these people from, I don't know what, Sudan, working in care homes, and they, in many cases, as we've found out from surreptitious videoing, they are not suitable for the work, but they're paid next to nothing, and the government gets by on that. And who can ever forget that that comment by that middle class lady in maybe Question Time when they were talking about Brexit. And Question Time, sorry, by the way, is a BBC programme where a panel of people, some politicians, some influencers, some dopey actors or whatever, and they are there to tell us how we should live our lives. And the people in the audience, it has been suggested that the BBC choose the people in the audience for the type of political opinions they have. Anyway, this middle class woman said, well, if we're leaving if we're leaving the European Union, who's going to serve us coffee in Pret? And she called it Pret, not Pret a Manger, which is the full name of the cafe. She's so used to going there that it's just Pret to her. And she's thinking, well, where are our servants and slaves going to come from? Basically, I could have jumped through the screen and strangled that woman. She needed a good slapping. Anyway, yeah, no, sorry about that. So it's easier to import people. For a time, this sleight of hand worked. Wage restraint in the NHS became international recruitment. Okay, universities starved of funding were turned into visa factories, and I know all about that because I have family working in universities. He's not wrong. A broken social care system was propped up with low-paid migrant labour instead of being rebuilt. Each failure was masked by the same answer: bring people in, keep the system moving, and push the costs into the future. Manning now concedes what voters were told was heresy, what voters knew but felt they could do nothing about. The fiscal benefits of this approach were always short-term, the costs were always long-term. And those costs are not abstract. They show up in overcrowded housing markets, longer NHS waiting lists, classrooms stretched beyond capacity, stagnant wages at the bottom end of the labour market, and a welfare state carrying obligations it was never designed to absorb at this scale. And I am getting over this cold, honestly, but it's taking its time. All right, now, if anyone remembers anything about American history, it is that slavery did not improve the economic outlook of the South. Yes, there were some very rich landowners, but apart from that, there was tremendous poverty among the white people because they were priced out of the market by the slavery system. So when you have any sort of a system of low or non-paid workers, this is going to not only make life miserable for the low or non-paid workers, it is also going to make life miserable for the people who aren't slaves but can't find work because they're priced out of their own market. And that's what's been happening all these years. And it's been disguised in this way. The displaced Indigenous people have been getting handouts from the government. They just live on the dole. We know about this. We've known about this for 30 or 40 years, that there are people who have never worked, their parents never worked, their grandparents never worked. They have lived their whole lives accepting money from the state. And they're just not used to working. And it's not worth it. They get more in benefits than they would, stacking shelves in Sainsbury's or whatever. The average low-earning migrant over a lifetime costs the state more than they contribute. Again, this is not a moral judgment on individuals. It's a devastating judgment on a policy that knowingly brought people into a system that could not support them without degrading conditions for everyone else. Manning's most revealing comparison is to public borrowing. Immigration, he says, was treated like debt. More money today, less tomorrow. That's exactly right. Governments spent social cohesion, infrastructure capacity, and public consent to buy short-term stability and political quiet. It's one of the problems of democracy. I'm not sure how to get around it, but if you don't support a lot of people, they are going to get angry and they're not going to vote for you next time. But that means that more people keep expecting support. I'm not sure how you manage that. The bill was deferred, not avoided, and now the bill is arriving. Population growth has outpaced housing, demand has outstripped services, pay has been held down by design. Communities feel transformed without consent, trust in institutions has collapsed. Even as net migration falls, the accumulated pressure remains. I don't see that it's falling, but maybe it is. You do not undo a population surge of millions by announcing lower numbers and moving on. Yeah, we've already got these people here. And that's when people start talking about mass deportations, which is difficult because it's going to put us in a lot of moral problems. Say 2 or 3 generations down, what do you do? Children, grandchildren, whatever. It is a serious problem. I'm not saying it's insurmountable, but it's going to be very difficult. And it can't be as blanket as some people like to think. But for sure, there are some people who really don't deserve to be living in this country and they shouldn't be here. What makes this scandalous is not that mistakes were made, it was a conscious strategy. Migration was not a byproduct of policy failure, it was the tool used to manage it, to manage the policy failure. Instead of governing honestly, the state imported labour and called it compassion. This is why public anger does not subside when ministers say numbers are down. People understand, even if politicians pretend not to, that the damage was cumulative. And the final indictment is this: a state that uses people to mask its failures is not humane, it is dishonest, and a political class that admits this only once the costs are locked in is not brave, it's just exposed. The OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, the OBR's figures remove the last layer of comfort. The average low-earning migrant over a lifetime costs the state more than they contribute. And yeah, we all know that, don't we? All those guys. I was just talking about a migrant who turned out to be a member of Hamas. He is now embedded in this country. There's no way that this government or this political system will get rid of him. No way at all. He'll be hanging around, and he's probably every bit as radical as he was when he was out in Gaza shooting ordinary Palestinians and then pretending it was the Israelis what done it. All right, well, I'm going to leave a link to KJM today. I haven't read it all. What I have read of it, it seems reasonable, not bigoted, just realistic. But I'm not responsible for whatever they have on all of their website. I just have to say that because I'm not a regular reader of it. It's just I know this fellow who wrote this article, which strikes me as being sensible, logical, and realistic. They published this, so that's why I'm recommending that. It might be terrible elsewhere. So yeah, make up your own minds about that. Okay, well, that's Jay Chimiri and his breakdown of a migration problem, which the next government, because not this one, the next government will have to fix and will become very unpopular for doing so. There'll be a lot of pushback from the media and a lot of videos of wailing children being dragged by their expelled parents onto aeroplanes or whatever. You know, it's not going to be nice. It really isn't going to be nice. We have to be prepared for that, as well as being prepared for defending our own country. Right, okay, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.